Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Good Tips for Hard Times, where we find smart people who have great advice to help you get through your days. So, we're so excited to have you back and hanging out with us. I'm Anita Sarkeesian. I'm a media critic, public speaker, and the executive director of the Games and Online Harassment Hotline, which is a new emotional resource for gaming communities. Follow us on all the things so that you know what we're doing. Before I bring on our guest this week, I wanted to take a minute to let you know, as you probably already do, that we are in the middle of a big fundraising campaign because you know what, y'all? Times are fucking hard right now. So, four nonprofits that serve the mental health, promote diversity and inclusivity and engagement in the games industry are coming together to help us get through these difficult times because y'all, running a nonprofit sucks at the best of times. So, if you would be so generous as to pitch in just a few bucks, $5, $3, everything helps at givebutter.com/stay in the game. If you can't, if times are tough right now, which I totally understand, if you could just help us spread the word, that would mean a lot to us. And I do have one other special announcement. Next week, May 21st, is Feminist Frequency's 11th anniversary. Can you believe it? I've been doing this for 11 whole years. So since that's such a big number, we wanted to commemorate that day. So mark your calendars. May 21st from 5 p.m. Pacific to midnight, we will be live streaming, and there's going to be all kinds of guests and giveaways and loads of fun shit. So May 21st, 5 p.m. to midnight Pacific time, right here on twitch.tv/femfreak. Excuse me. All right. So let's do this show. I'm going to bring on our guest. Hi, Madelin.
Hello, how's it going?
I am doing well. So Madelin Woods is the founder of Walden Coaches, and I immediately thought of you when we started planning this show because, y'all, people are working from home for the first time and have no idea how to do this. And you know something about that.
It's a whole new world out there.
It really is.
Honestly, I think it's changed for everybody. I mean, that's like an obvious statement. But yeah, I mean, coaching is something that we need it more than ever. And so it's just been super interesting to kind of see how, people's worlds have just totally changed.
Yeah.
And how we all need to try to adapt and survive and, figure out how to live our lives entrapped in our apartments for who knows how
Right?
long.
Absolutely. So y'all, throw in your questions in the chat at any point during this, and we will take them periodically throughout the conversation or towards the end or whenever I feel like it. But you send over your questions as you have them. What is Walden Coaches? What do you do? What does that mean?
Yeah. So we are a coaching platform. So we connect people who are making things, creators, people starting new businesses, with coaches. And the coaches that we find they're people who have domain expertise. So they've like worked real jobs, they've like done things before, they've, started their own businesses. But they also kind of have that like emotional capacity to help guide you through things. They're almost like, mentors, but on steroids kind of thing. So, you've been a coach before,
I
which
have,
is awesome
yeah.
platform.
Yeah.
But yeah, we really just try to help connect people and make sure that they have the support that they need as they are starting their businesses or getting their projects off the ground.
Yeah, it was actually a really cool. I to be a coach, I did it for about a year, and I just didn't have capacity to do it anymore. But it was so exciting to see all the different projects people were working on and be able to take what I've learned over all of these years of like managing teams and doing creative projects and helping folks like get centered. And so I feel like that's a little bit of what we can do today, is to give some of those like behind the scenes tips that we would offer clients on how to just get through this time. I do want to start really quickly by just acknowledging what I am now referring to as the tyranny of productivity. That like we have this, I call everything that I think is a bad thing, I just add tyranny in front of it. Totally works. Don't tell me that it doesn't. It's fine. But like I think that we have this very capitalist notion of what productivity is, and that we need to be constantly working, and that we need to be creating, and that we have all this downtime, so therefore we need to fill it. And I want to just put out there that like that's not what this conversation is about at all. There is not, we are not intending to pressure anyone into feeling like they should be doing more, or that they should be feeling a certain way, or that every day is going to be the same, and that like it's going to shift and ebb and flow. And so we want to just talk a little bit about how you can maybe integrate a couple of tips here and there to make your days a little more sustainable, a little more accountable to yourself, understanding that there's going to be harder days than others.
Yeah, definitely. Productivity is the definition of that word has changed for every single person right now. So,
and I really actively tried to avoid that in our marketing of this particular session, because it's just, I feel like it's a bit of a trigger word for a lot of folks, because, you know, I even started doing some hobby stuff and was like, how do I make this a thing that I put into the world? And I was like, no, it can just be for me. Like, that's okay. And I think it's really hard, especially for those of us in these creative spaces, to recognize that like our hobbies and our things that we do on the side can just be for fun. Right.
Yep. So, definitely.
Okay. So how different is it? Like, are you noticing it with your clients? Like, what are you noticing right now in terms of people transit? Because you've worked with people who work from home. You work with people who have side projects. You also work with companies that are starting up. So like, what is it looking like right now for your clients?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, on the one hand, like the first thing is super noticeable, such as everybody is talking about it, right? Like COVID, like how is this affecting your life? How is this affecting the way that you're working and doing things? So the one most noticeable thing is just like, this is a topic of conversation with every single meeting and every single client that I have. And that's just like really weird. You know, like usually there's like a couple of themes that kind of bubble up. But it's different for every person. And I think right now it's just one of those, like, it's like this global unifying thing that's like, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you feel this. And I think that's something that, like, you know, on the one hand, it kind of brings people together in a funny way. But it also just really makes you think about, why are you doing what you do? And how does that impact the rest of the world? So I think a lot of people are starting to think, you know, outside of themselves. And it's kind of interesting to see that. But the second thing that I'm sort of seeing is that people are either like, this is like their time to shine, and they're like busier than ever, and they're like, oh my God, I gotta like close sales, like I gotta like, you know, move on this. Or they're kind of like, well, there we go, like that, I gotta figure something else out, like this is no longer relevant. So if people are really kind of falling in, you know, a couple of those camps, there's, you know, the people sort of in between that are, you know, just like, I guess this is a little bit different, but, you know, not much. But I think a lot of people are really just, trying to figure out like which, you know, how to move forward on what they're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. And in new environments, right? So like you might be in a house with your roommates or a partner or family when you're not getting any breaks or children, right? In any space. Do you have thoughts around like how to establish boundaries with your new coworkers? Really?
Yes, definitely. So there's a few different things, and I think every different type of person struggles with something different. So like the single person who lives alone, has a very different set of problems than like the mom of 3 kids, right? And so the types of things that you have to worry about are very, very different. And I think for a single person living at home, it's like, okay, how do I like make sure that I'm getting enough social interaction, but not so much that I'm like tired of looking at screens all day. And then for the mom of 3 kids, like you really just need to like reduce what you're expecting yourself to be able to do. And the interesting thing with that is that it's become way less taboo to have, people's kids like flying around in the background on their screens, just like noises in the background. And it doesn't really matter who you are. Like if you see that, it's just like, oh, cool. Like that's your life.
Who's going to be mad about that at this point? I do wonder, just as an aside, like how much that will last, beyond this moment in time, right? If we're just going to be a little more forgiving of like the fact that people have lives and families and that they are going to interact with with other people in different contexts that they weren't expecting to.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting too, even just like watching, like content on the internet, right? Or like what used to be TV, and just like kind of seeing like the insides of celebrities' homes, right? And like even they have, kids and dogs and things that just kind of pop up in the middle of something that used to be this like, beautiful like backdrop of a set or something. So I think it is really just sort of shifting like what we expect from, people who are our managers or celebrities or, our friends or coworkers.
Absolutely. So, okay, what is one, like, what is a tip, general, like a sort of general purpose, like baseline that people can do to try and figure out how to be at home all the time working from home? Like, I feel like our bodies get really tired. There's not a lot of movement happening.
Yeah, I think like the first thing to just really think about is just like your physical self and your physical space. So we are human creatures who inhabit this body, and you need to just like understand and respect that. And so I see a lot of people who are just like glued to their desk. I mean, myself included. Like I'm all day, it's like 12:30 and I'm like still at my desk, like doing things because I don't really have anywhere else to be. But as much as possible, just try to pull yourself out from that. Like go find a group of friends to like do yoga with. Somebody earlier had mentioned that they have a group yoga thing at 6 p.m. so that when it ends at 7, they hear everybody clapping for them. And it's like they've just done something and like everybody's celebrating them doing that. So just find ways to sort of build into your schedule, like, a quick walk, like twice a day. Obviously stay safe and, wear your mask and stuff like that. But like, just do something to move your body because you need to take care of that.
Yeah.
I think,
I was going to say, and if you have mobility issues or there's, disability stuff, like whatever it is, that might be your ways of incorporating like cognitive breaks from the work that you're doing.
Yep, exactly. And then the other thing is really just like setting up your workspace in a way that's like separate from your living space. So as much as possible, try to keep, the separation between like when and where you're doing work and when and where you're doing not work. So like, for example, I use different devices for when I'm having like social time with my family versus, doing like a work meeting, right? Or just different times and different locations. Like, even if you have like a tiny apartment, just use one corner for one thing and like one corner for another thing. Just like find ways to separate that.
Yeah. I love that idea of different devices. I didn't realize that I'm already doing that. Like I have my work computer and then I use like an iPad to do like fitness videos or to like, if I'm like doing something, a different type of project, I've been doing like some online education stuff. I'll do that on my iPad instead so that it actually mentally just feels like a different thing.
Exactly.
So we were talking before this, I have worked from home on and off for like, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years. Like when everyone was like, what do we do? I was like, I got this. This is at least one thing that I got. And that was, and your point about workspace, I like really want to emphasize because for a long time I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment and I worked from home. And so your living room was also your office and it was also your social space. And it was like, it's everything in that space. And it became really tough. And this was after years, but like it's really tough to separate it because you never stop working. There's this feeling of like you're never working and you're never not working all at the same time. That's very hard to articulate that I think more people understand now. So yeah, like having that corner, having a little desk somewhere, like maybe avoid working on the couch if you can avoid it, makes a huge difference. Yeah.
I try to separate it. I live in a very, very long apartment with my boyfriend. And so every once in a while, it's like, 5:45 or 6:30 or something. I was like, can you walk me home from work? And he'll just like walk me down the hallway and we'll just like have a conversation. And that's just like how we sort of transition into like, all right, time to like eat now.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cute. I will say too, I'm gonna keep doing this during this call. Like, and it's not that you have to do this without fail on a regimented schedule every single day. Like, a couple days ago I worked from bed. Like, I just, I was like, I'm having this day, and that's what's gonna happen, and that's okay. And then the next day I got up and worked from my desk, and so I'm saying this to everyone and also to myself that like not every day is equal, right? That not every day is gonna feel the same, and that you should really give yourself the flexibility to adjust as you need to.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things that's actually come up is like a lot of folks who haven't ever worked from home are kind of saying like, I feel really guilty when I take a break, or, I don't feel like it's right. Like I'm not responsive during this time, or like I need to go eat, or like my kitchen's a mess. Like I need to clean it in the middle of the day. Right. And those things they're really important. Like you need to be able to take care of your space. You don't work in an office where, there's other people who kind of like help keep things clean, or where, there's not like messes don't just like pile up because you don't have all of your like home clutter, around you. So it's really important to just like, maintain your space and take the time to do that. And yeah, like you said, just like don't feel guilty for working from bed or taking a nap in the middle of the day or just like decompressing. Like this is a really, really hard moment for all of us. Like it doesn't matter if you're, like really thriving in this time, like it's still like a jolt to your system. So you really just need to like pay attention to what your body and your brain needs, and just do that.
Yeah. So another thing to just acknowledge, I don't know if there's anything to be done about this, but I feel like, part of my working from home was that for most of that was I'm my own boss. And so I get to set those parameters, which is also a part of accountability, which we should talk about. like sometimes when you can set your own parameters, you don't set any and you just work all the time. But I feel like there's folks who, are dealing with like new expectations of work from home from their bosses. So like, there are folks who I know some people who like have to be on a video call every single morning with their staff, with their their coworkers, which I think is mind-bogglingly insane. Like as a manager, I would never do that, because you have to understand that this shift is so emotionally taxing on people. But I don't know, like you can not have an answer to this, but I'm just trying to like, are there things that folks can do to try to deal with these new expectations that are being thrown on them from their workplaces?
Yeah, definitely. So on the one hand, if you're a manager, find ways to just over communicate with your employees, and just make sure that they are taking care of themselves. Like it's, they're looking up to you as a leader, and to be able to understand like how they can sort of operate within your organization. So make sure that you're, checking in on them, making sure that they're okay. But that, if they need to reschedule a meeting or something like that, just try to be a little bit more flexible with how you're setting that structure, and check in with them and see, what's working, what's not working. I think that's super important. That's something that I sort of set at the very beginning of this with my employees, where I was like, you know what, like, we're going to have to start working from home soon. So like, let me know how I can best support you. Like if you need social time, like just ping me. Like we can set up like, a live stream or something, and just like have like that sort of physical person sort of like next to you while you're working, or, don't be afraid to just like hop on a video call to talk through something, because you can't really just like pop over and, have a conversation or ask a question about something. So it's something to just, as a manager, like be proactive about communicating with your employees. And then on the flip side, as an employee, like over communicate with your manager, right? Like if something isn't working for you, like a specific meeting time, or, like showing up with your video on at like 9 a.m, right? Like I struggle with that. Like I'm not a morning person. Try to find ways to communicate with your boss and just kind of let them know like, hey, like I want to be here. I'm like, excited to continue doing this work. I'm, I want to be, like supporting this organization in the best way that I possibly can. But like, here, this is my life right now. And like, here's how you can best support me. And then also your manager's a person too. So like ask them how you can best support them, and really just try to build up that mutual, like trusting relationship to figure out like how you can all work better together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. One thing, I don't know how other people's like business Slacks are set up, but because we've always been a remote office, we have a lot of social channels. And we separate out like so for what we do, we have a social channel called End Times, which is about all the bad things. And we started it when Trump got elected so that wasn't just like all over our Slack everywhere. Like if you wanted to talk about how horrible the world is, you had a space to go do that. And so there's some weeks where I'm in there all the time and other weeks where I'm like, I don't really want to pay attention to any of this. But we also have like, a pop culture chat where you can just drop stuff in, or we have Hugbox, which is also like just happy things, like just like it's mostly cute animals, to be honest, but like, occasionally there's like the happy baby or whatever. And so like those I think are a great way to like relieve some of the like work pressure with your employees and have a space of interaction that's like maybe you don't know some of the other people that work with you very well. And so you can still have that kind of water cooler talk without having to like DM them, which feels like a really intense conversation. I have a friend who switched jobs in the middle of this and is just like, it's weird because I don't know these people very well. And so, I think those spaces can be really valuable. Those
Definitely.
Digital spaces.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of weird little apps popping up right now. Like I think it's like icebreaker.video. There's a couple like Slack bots that just kind of help you bring back that water cooler vibe. That really is like, it's not Zoom. Like you're not like in this like, little Brady Bunch box over here, but it's like, just things that can kind of like shake it up and have a little bit of fun with the people that you're working with, is so important. And especially if you don't know people, just like find ways to reach out and say like, hey, who are you? Like,
right.
what do you care about? Like, do you want to have like coffee or something? And just set up those one-on-ones and just do your best to, get to know the people who are like, if not physically around you, like around you in the internet space.
Or if you're super introverted, then maybe don't do that. The idea of like reaching out to a stranger and having a one-on-one conversation sound like over in that context sounds frightening to me. So I just want to acknowledge to the folks that might not work for you, that there might be other ways to do that in more group ways.
These are all just ideas. If it resonates
totally.
with you, go for it. Not prescriptive at all.
Of course. And like, I know some folks are doing like group happy hours with their teams, which might be another way of like easing the tension where it's not like you're responsible for holding up a conversation. You're getting all of my anxieties right now.
Yep.
So... actually, before I'm going to shift it slightly, but I do want to talk about video chat fatigue. I think for a lot of folks, they're not used to being on screens all the time and engaging in this particular way, which feels different.
It's very different. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like my meetings went from not that many. It was like a reasonable number of meetings, like maybe, I don't know, like 10 scheduled meetings or something a week. I have like 30 to 40 meetings a week right now. And it's insane. Like they're like back to back, it's all this stuff. And I think I've just been very like liberal about giving out my meeting scheduling link, and people are like, let's catch up. Like I have a question about this. And I'm just like, yeah, exciting. Like, let's chat. But like, it's just been a lot. And I definitely get to the point where it's like, especially with time zone difference, right? Like I'm in New York and there are people in San Francisco and they're like, hey, can we hop on a call at like, 6 p.m. PST? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like that's 9 p.m. But sometimes, like you have to, or like I try not to build up meeting debt or something like that so that it like gets pushed to the next day where I already have a block of, 10 meetings. And so I think it's really like, find ways to say like, just cut it off and say like, cool, I'm not going to take meetings after this time. Build buffers in between your meetings, right? Like if people are able to schedule on your calendar, or if you're, doing that yourself, just make sure that you have some time in between things so that you can sort of like adjust, reset, like go get another cup of coffee, like drink some tea, like take a nap, like do it, like check your email, do whatever you need to do. Because it is a lot to just be like, hyper focused on this little screen in front of your face. And then the other thing is like, I've had people who, they said like, hey, can we just do a phone call? Like, I don't want to be on video right now. Like, I'm just like laying on the couch, like, and we can just talk about it. And that's fine. So I think it's totally okay if you're like, not looking so hot today, just saying like, I'm going to turn my video off. Is that okay? Like, I need to just like close my eyes right now. Find ways to like just tap into what you need and build in those boundaries within your conversations. And like people will like understand.
Yeah, they generally do. I know folks who have things that they do while they're on calls, so they don't want to be on video, right? Like they might be playing solitaire in the background because that's the way that they like that's the
Yep.
way they work or what have you. And so I know folks who just won't do video chat unless it's absolutely essential. So giving yourself the permission to not always be on camera all the time, I think is really good advice.
Yes.
I also need to heed that because I have an auto calendar scheduler that I just send out. I use Calendly, which I love because then you don't have to do the back and forth. Talk about like productivity and efficiency. You don't have to do the back and forth constantly of trying to schedule a time to meet. But I forgot to put in like lunch hours that are blocked off because I don't necessarily eat lunch at the same time every day. But sometimes but I haven't blocked that off. And so some days I'll have back to back with like no space to eat at all. And I think it's just really important that we like, have that and maybe have lunch at the same time every day just as like a routine, right? And you can actually put that on your calendar so that you remember to
Yep.
do it.
Exactly. Yeah, I try really hard to keep my meetings times, the windows between like 1 and 5 p.m. And so that's really like the only time when people can schedule unless they, specifically ask or unless I specifically ask. And so I really try to keep that so that I can kind of keep my mornings to, like taking care of my own things and like email and just kind of like rolling into the day. Like I'm very much like a night owl. So like my mornings are precious and I just, like find out those things about yourself. Like this is a really amazing moment for you to be able to like take a step back from like office culture and just understand like when are you most productive? Like do you have meetings, better in the afternoons or in the mornings? And just try to work your calendar and your schedule around that. And just like feel it out, see what works. But yeah, I like highly recommend building those buffers in. Um, and then also like sometimes I just block off Mondays. I'm like, no meetings on Mondays because it's still basically Sunday for me. So like I'm tired, like
Nice.
just give me another day to like, relax and do my work. But yeah, just do that. Just like build buffers in.
I should try that. I always try to take Friday. Like I used to try to just cut Fridays off, but then everything gets pushed into Friday. But I feel like
Exactly.
a Monday, nothing can get pushed into Monday. It's the beginning of the
Exactly.
week. I like that. That's a good one.
Yep.
If
Yep.
y'all have any questions for Madeline about working from home and accountability, please throw them in the chat. I do want to shift a little bit into the actual working part of working from home. You were talking to me about time boxing. What does that mean?
Yeah, so time boxing is basically just setting up chunks of time where you're doing a specific task or piece of work. So if you have something that's like there's kind of two different kinds of schedules. There's like maker schedules and manager schedules. But if you're more on the maker schedule or if you have something that requires like deep thought, make sure that you have that time and that you're sort of setting it up like, okay, by the end of this hour, like I need to just make sure to get this one goal done. And you can do that in, tiny increments of like 20 minutes. Like I really just got to like bang this email out. Or like, an hour or a couple hours, right? Like this is just the time where like anything else that's not related to this is like just not going to happen. So just as much as you can, like find times when you're like, this is the piece of work that's going to get done. And if you can kind of build a routine around that, you'll find that, you can better set expectations. You understand like when things are able to get done, how long they take. And then you can better communicate that to your team and to your clients or to whoever you're working with. So it's kind of like a practice that's best when built up over time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But it's something, I don't know, just to get into the habit of doing is just saying like, I'm going to get this one thing done during this specific amount of time, and just hold yourself to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you feel about checklists?
I'm a
Like
big
to-do
checklist
lists,
person.
all of those
Yeah.
kinds of things. Yeah.
I'm a big checklist person. They come in waves though. Like I'll have like, and it depend. I like change my mode of, making checklists all the time. Like I have a couple different apps on my computer, but sometimes I have to like declare bankruptcy on that checklist, and I'll go to a different app. And then sometimes it's just like pieces of paper strewn about my desk. So it kind of depends on what I'm working on. But I really think that, if you can kind of get into the habit of like writing things down. Like for me in the morning when I wake up, like my head is a blank slate. Like I just like forget everything that happened the day before, and it takes me all day to like kind of get into that groove. But if I wake up and there's like a checklist there, I'm like, oh yeah, like these are the top 3 things that I need to get done today. So I try as much as possible to like set that up for myself the night before, and really just make sure that I'm like, yeah, like preparing myself for that moment when I wake up and I'm like, today, like it could be Friday or like
I don't have anything to do today.
Know.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about, so one thing that I've started doing is I have a accountability buddy. So I have a friend that I check in with every Monday, and it is stressful, but also really good because I'm like, oh God, what do I have to do this week? I don't even know. And then I just like blurt it all out. And now I have a list every week. And then the next week I have someone to be like, did you do the things? Right.
Yep.
I feel like that is a lot of what Walden, not a lot, but it is definitely some of what Walden offers. Can you talk more about how that actually works?
Yeah, definitely. So Walden was definitely built with this in mind, where I kind of noticed this within myself and within friends and people who I was just like accountability buddying with, was that there's always kind of this concept of like the conversation that you have and then like the tasks that you need to get done. And so within Walden, when you're chatting with your coach, you have like this shared task list and this shared to-do list. And so if you're kind of like, okay, cool, like these are my goals for the week. Some people are very good at holding themselves accountable to that, but sometimes you need that little nudge where it's like it comes out of nowhere and they're like, you said you were going to do this, did you do it? And it's not your boss where like your job is on the line. It's not like your partner or your friend who it's like it's not their job to like make sure that you're getting your work done. This is like a person who's like they don't have any attachments to like this actually getting done, except that like they're here to hold you accountable to it. And so I find, whether it's a coach or whether it's a friend, just having those people where you can kind of keep mutually accountable to those things and keep a shared to-do list it's actually like very helpful and can help you just boost your productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question in the chat that says, how do you deal with distractions and pings and attention asks when you're trying to time box a task?
Oh man, yeah. Put it on Moon. Like, I don't know how else to call that, but if you're time boxing something, like there's some times that I'm like, okay, I gotta like get this done by, like 5 p.m. or something. Like mute all of your notifications. Like I'll turn off Slack because sometimes like even when you're on a video call, like it's really annoying. Bless you, by the way. Even when you're on a video call, the Slack notifications still like ding in the background and it's like just really annoying, right? So I'll just like quit Slack and say like, nope, done. Like I will come back to this after I finish this thing. And people can wait. Like that's fine.
Yeah, they can, right? Like I feel like it doesn't feel that way often, but like usually it's fine.
Exactly.
There's the Pomodoro technique that I've used off and on occasionally, which is you work for a 20-hour sprint and like with no distractions, and then you take a 5-minute break, and then you work for another 20 did I say 20 hour? 20 minutes. Whoa.
20 minutes. Yep.
Yeah, 20 minutes.
You can do that too.
Yeah, and you can time that however you want to time it. I find actually I find it very difficult because my work life is spread out through what other people are doing most of the day. It's not like I'm like I have to sit down and write this thing sometimes, but not often. And so like how would you go about doing like focusing on one task at a time when you have so many people who are like asking things of you? Unless that's sort of kind of what you said a little bit
it's
already.
A good question. I mean, sometimes, especially like I'm a very like social person, and I like having like when a person is in front of me, like I'm paying attention to them. And I won't really, like listen to my Slacks or my notifications or whatever. But like if you're that kind of a person, like sometimes I'll just hop on a call with somebody and say like, hey, can we do this live like together? And just like co-work on a task. There's a couple apps that do this, like Focusmate, where you can just kind of like pair with somebody online virtually to like get something done, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like if I'm working on a project like and I need to get something done, I'll say like, hey, Anita, can we just like talk through this really quickly? Or like, can you just like help me like just put my brain in its place? We get a lot of that in office spaces, right? Where you're like, hey, can I like ask you a question? Or you just go up to somebody and say like, what are you working on? And all of a sudden you've like unblocked them from something. But you kind of need to put in that effort and try to make that happen and like, sort of design those situations when you're not physically around other people.
Yeah.
So this is something that you can do, with your roommates or with your coworkers or with your friends, where, like at the beginning of the day, like with my partner, we'll just say like, hey, like, can you help me like think through like the things that I need to get done today? And just by like talking about it out loud, like you can just get them done. And like, during that conversation, during that time, like you're not looking at your phone, you're not like paying attention to your emails and stuff like that. And it just kind of speeds up that process.
Yeah. How do you feel about, I feel like sometimes we're like, well, I have to do this big project, right? This thing needs to be finished. I need to start this show or start this podcast or code this thing. I'm clearly a coder. How do you like deal with the magnitude of a huge project? Like if you're looking on your to-do list and it says make a podcast, like what do you do to not immediately shudder in horror about how big of a project that is?
Yeah, that's a huge project. And sometimes when you have something like that on your list, you don't even know how big it is. And so it's just like this weird, like, okay, cool, I guess I'm going to just do that today, but you can't. So the biggest thing that I do is just kind of break down like what's the first thing that needs to get done for this and just break it down into smaller tasks, right? So if your task is to make a podcast, right? Your first task might be like, okay, what's the topic of this podcast, right? Like what is the one-liner? What's the one thing that we're going to do? Your next task might be like shop it around to a friend, just like ping 5 people and say, hey, like I'm thinking of doing this. Like what is interesting about this? What isn't interesting about it? Those are like individual tasks that you can kind of, check off and do that all sort of like lead you in the right direction. So one example of how I've done this recently, I've been working on this one side project for like literally 8 years. It's a 3D printed twistable burrito holder. I don't know if we talked about this, but yeah. So it's like this crazy project, and basically it's literally taken me years. But at the beginning of the year, I'll say, what's the one thing I can do on this project to move it forward? And like, one year it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to like just try to get a prototype of this made, or, I'm just going to email this manufacturer, or I'm just going to like, talk about this to anybody. Right. And just by doing that one thing, like you catalyze like 600 different things that just pop up, and like the momentum just sort of like drives itself in a way. So with every single project that you have, just like really think about like, okay, cool. Like what's the one thing that I need to do to push this forward? And then figure out like what the time span is of it. Is this something that you want to be like, an everyday kind of project, and every week and every month or an every year kind of project? And it's totally fine to say like, this is a project that I will do, like I will think about one time this entire year, and I will just do that one task, and that's fine. So just, break it down. That's like the biggest thing.
Nice. Yeah, I really like that idea. Sometimes, even if it's not a huge project, but like some days when I'm just really struggling, or I'm really distracted, or I'm like, I can't get anything done. I'm like, what's one thing? What's the smallest thing I can do today? Right. And then like, if it's not on your checklist, fucking write it down and then check it off. Right. Like,
exactly.
I love the retroactive checking off of things. I do that a lot just to feel accomplished. But some days it's like, I sent that one email that I have been avoiding writing for like 2 weeks, and there's no real reason I've been avoiding it. But I just have, like, getting that thing done or whatever, I think can really Just be like, cool, I did a thing, right?
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
we have a question from chat from Cass Reedman that says, I'd appreciate tips on how to shake that pressure to be productive all the time.
Yeah, good one. So this is like, we talked about this a little bit at the very beginning of this, but like, I think productivity is really something that you kind of have to like redefine what that means in your head, right? Like, does this mean like you're getting like just enough of your work done to like say like, yeah, I did a good job on this? Or is this like the feeling of being in the zone? Or is this like, the number of tasks that you're checking off? I really think that it's like, thinking about productivity, it's like, am I doing the things that I'm intending and like setting out to do? And if you're at the point where you're like not hitting your goals on that, like you kind of probably need to scope down what you're expecting of yourself. And so I think with productivity, it's like, you might have like blah days, right? You have blah weeks or blah years, and like that's fine. And you just kind of like when you're in that moment, just like accept it and say like, I'm here right now. I'm gonna be here again. Like this is just what it is, and just try to like sit with it and like map it out and say like, how do I feel when I'm in this state of mind? Like what helps, what doesn't help? Like what do I enjoy doing? Do I need to just lay on the couch for 8 hours and just like, I call these my like cry days, right? Like that's having a cry day is productivity for me, right? Like that's productive because I've just like released something and I'm like able to be, back on my feet like the next day doing things. If I don't have that, it's all hell breaks loose. But just find a way to redefine what productivity means for you and what is a productive thing. If that's relaxing, like that is being productive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cry days. Love that. Physiologically, crying actually releases stress. So it is actually really helpful and useful and scientifically sound to have a good cry. It's why you sort of, if you have a big cry, you feel a little bit relieved afterwards.
Yeah.
I have been trying in that regard too. Like I've been trying to be really conscious of weekends. I think it's a really hard thing to be aware of when you're working from home, and really having at least a day that's just a no work day, and that don't answer emails, don't turn your computer on for work related tasks if you can, because having that 1 day or 2 days is just it will help clear your brain a little bit.
Yeah, that's so important. Honestly, like last weekend, I didn't get that. I like randomly had meetings all day and I was like, oh crap, like this is not going to be good.
I have not heeded my own advice for the last couple. I'm in the middle of a fundraiser, so it's such a
Totally.
I can't like justify taking the time off, but I really before that have been doing that and been like, okay, I'm gonna do like a weird food experiment, or I'm gonna go for a longer walk or whatever, just to be doing something different. I'm gonna water my plants for like 3 hours.
Exactly.
I'm gonna talk to them. It's gonna be great.
That's a very cathartic task to do.
Yeah, for sure.
The one advice that I would give, especially as like a startup founder who like doesn't have, like nights and weekends, like that doesn't mean anything, right? Like a Saturday is not just a Saturday. I try to find like other pockets of time that are like my weekend time. So, I might take a weekend for like 4 hours in the middle of a Tuesday, or, I might take a weekend on like Friday morning, right? And, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for everybody. Like, it actually does help to take like 2 full days to like just not be there and just like, do the things that you need to do in your life. But if for whatever reason, like you're busy, or like this is like a thing, like a specific amount of time that, you're fundraising or you're in the middle of like a big push, find other moments throughout the day that you can take that time to just like decompress. And then like the other thing is like after your fundraiser, after your big project, like take it way easy on yourself. Like you need to unwind from that. And it might take, like 2 full weeks to do that. I call this like post-project depression, right? It's just like, you need to just like take a step back and understand that like you just did a big push and like you don't need to be there at that level like all the time. So like just walk it back.
Absolutely. And for folks who might not have that time from their jobs to do that. Like just the weekend is, I'd love to take 2 weeks off. Yeah, but like
not necessarily taking it off. It's also just like
being
reducing
chill.
the expectations of
Yeah.
like what you're able to do. So if you just, have that conversation with your boss and say like, hey, we just did this really big push, like I'm not necessarily taking time off, but I'm just going to be reducing my workload a little bit so that I can recover here.
Yeah.
And just, every day when you're, if you have to do your stand-ups or if you're kind of checking in with like, here's what I'm supposed to be getting done this week, like take your checklist and like cut it in half and then cut it in half again and say like, I'm only going to get these like 2 things done.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel about, so there's a couple of comments about, the idea of like breaking down projects and time management and having some difficulty around doing that. How do you feel about like physical handwriting sometimes versus on computers?
Yeah, it's important. I do physical handwriting for things like journaling. Like if there's, if you need to like just get a bunch of like, I call this like trash brain, like get a bunch of trash out of your brain. Like it just helps so much to like do physical handwriting, and then you can kind of just like close it and like throw it away if you need to.
Yeah.
But even just for like physical tasks, like, it's so satisfying just to like cross it off and be like, yes, like this is done. And it just, yeah, I mean, physical handwriting is super helpful. Like whatever systems you need, like there's so many productivity tools out there and like, little tips and tricks and stuff like that. But like, honestly, like the more time you spend like digging into that stuff, like the less time you're actually doing the thing that you're trying to do. So just make the systems that you need work for you and like, don't think too much about the tooling.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of like agreement around the post-project crash.
Yeah,
that
it's
sort
a
of
real
depression.
thing.
It's so real.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, especially I know like we have a lot of games folks in our community, and like games take a really long time to make, and so you're like, oh, I've been working on this for years and it's finally out there in the world, and why am I so depressed right now?
Yeah,
Right.
It's real. And I think, when you get into that state of mind, just like recognize like this was just because I pushed on this thing for a very, very long time. And now, I have this like hole in my life, right? Like I don't have this like big goal at the end of this, big block of time, or, I just had this like really big effort, right? It's like running a marathon, right? Like I just did this huge push. And just recognize that like that sadness is related to like this change in what you're doing right now. It's not like, you're not like a depressed person. You are not like a sad person. Like this is something that's just like extremely related to like the thing that you were just doing, and just like take the pressure off of yourself, when you're kind of in that state of mind, and it's okay to be sad sometimes.
Yeah, it is okay to be sad sometimes. I feel like I want to just put that everywhere. I feel too often we're just like, oh, like the goal is to always be happy, and we're trying to like figure out how to do that, and that's not actually the goal. The goal is to live a full life of emotions. So yeah,
Exactly.
Oh, here's a good question from Ozok. How do you deal with prioritization? Any tips? I tend to have way too many things I want to do, and I'm really not good at picking what things I actually care about.
Yeah, this is a great question. So I have a couple different frameworks for doing this. And one is basically like I don't know, I forget how this works, but there's some sort of like 2x2 graph or something. And it's basically like, the things that have the most urgency around them, and like the things that take the least amount of time. So like the intersection of those two things are like, you take those and you put those at the top, right? So like an urgent task might be, like I have to like prepare for this meeting tomorrow, right? Like there's a time on that. Like you have to like, prepare for this meeting tomorrow. And like, what's the like smallest thing that you can do for that? Just like write 3 bullet points, right? Like you don't need to like plan out, I mean, maybe you do need to like plan out this whole slide deck, or like do your like H1 goals or something like that. But like try not to do all of your H1 goals in like an hour before the meeting. But just try to find like the smallest thing that you can do that has the most impact on that like urgent thing. And like, yeah, just really kind of map out, like I usually do this thing where I'm like, okay, this is like high priority, like medium priority, and low priority. And this is especially important for like scoping things for a team. And so like with every single task, I go through this like every like week or two. I'm like, okay, like is this blocking somebody from doing something that's like an important part of, my business or my job, right? Like this is like the highest priority thing. And then like medium tasks are like, these might be larger things that like maybe we haven't scoped out that well. Like they might take a little bit more time, or like we kind of need to think through them a little bit, or, maybe they're important, but they're not like that urgent. Like they don't need to get done today. And so like those are things where like as you kind of like get through the high priority tasks, you can kind of think about like, all right, in the back burner, your brain is like kind of noodling on like, all right, what do we need to do to like get these other tasks going? And then like low priority tasks, like, if you have time and they take like 2 seconds, like when you have, some like space in between things, you're kind of like, I don't know, like what should I be doing right now? Or you're in the middle of something on the high priority and you're like, oh, this is kind of related to this other thing. I'll just like fix that really quickly. Just try to knock off like one high priority task like a day. Like in the medium priority tasks, like just try to like get more clarity and definition around those, and then just do like one low priority task. And like between that, like if you just do one from each bucket like every day, like you'll be fine. Like you'll be like on track for like doing things and hit a really good cadence with it.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. I know that the sort of getting things done productivity philosophy is like, if it takes you 2 minutes, just do it. Like, yeah, just exactly. Do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. That's like a mental training thing. You kind of just have to like, just like remind yourself of that.
Yeah. I actually have a tag in my to-do list called busy work, which is the stuff when I'm like overloaded and don't want, like I feel like I need to still be working, but I can't do anything useful. And it's like, organize my Dropbox and like it's just, I need to put a spreadsheet together or whatever, what have you. And so like sometimes I'll go to those as well in those moments. But I like that distinction so that we can mentally have that clarity of like what is actually priority each day or each week. Madelin, you are delightful. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us.
Thanks can folks for having me.
Yeah, how can folks find out more about you and Walden and maybe get some coaching services?
Yeah, if you go to hellowalden.com, you can find a coach. And if you have any questions about that, we have support on our website. I'm happy to field any questions. My Twitter is @madw, MADW. So feel free to reach out. If you want to learn more about the burrito holder, it's on my Twitter also, burritopop.com. But yeah, hit me up. Amazing. I'm always around.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Madelin.
Thank you. Bye, Anita.
Oh, tech. Okay, I can make this work. All right, y'all. Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our mods for keeping this space friendly and for all of you for tuning in. You can watch the video of this anytime at the Games Hotline YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/gameshotline. As you know, we're in the middle of a fundraiser. I'm not going to give you the whole spiel, but basically we need help keeping nonprofits that are servicing the games industry open and responding to our needs today. So if you could go to givebutter.com/stayinthegame and drop in a couple of bucks, that would be amazing. Also, excuse me, mark your calendars. May 21st is Feminist Frequency's 11th anniversary, and so we are having a big birthday celebration with guests and giveaways and all kinds of fun shit. So May 21st, 5 p.m. to midnight Pacific time. I hope to see you all there. And that's in a week, y'all, just so you know, and so I know to get that going. But next week we'll be talking to Erica S. Wheelhouse from Strive Family Resources about parenting during a pandemic and her tips for bolstering the mental health of both parents and kids. So we will see you at both of those things next week. Bye.